Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the audio theater panel here at BroadwayCon. I can't believe I get to say welcome to BroadwayCon. That was really fun. So real quick, my name is Jillian Pensavalli. My pronouns are she, her. I am your moderator. I'm also a professional podcaster. I do True Crime Obsessed, which is a true crime documentary recap comedy podcast, but we have a lot of heart. We don't victim blame. I know true crime and comedy, it's weird to hear. And for the last 5 years, I've been making the Hamilcast. So every week I talk to someone related to the show Hamilton on the stage, under the stage, next to the stage, in the office, making the show happen. And I also just did a Twas the Night, which was a radio play to raise money for the Actors Fund. So needless to say, I love audio. I love talking to people, and I'm thrilled to be here. So enough about me. That was way too much talk about me. Panelists, can you please all introduce yourselves and 30 seconds or less, tell me what we're talking about today, what project you're here to talk about. So Jen, can we start with you?
You can start with me. Yes, hi, I'm Jenn Colella, and I honestly don't know what I'm supposed to discuss today. That's the truth of the matter. I don't know what. Is that what we're talking about?
That's what I was told.
Okay, yes, then yes.
We can also talk about anything you want, Jenn Colella.
No, I'm down. I'm totally down. There's a couple of projects, so I just wanted to make certain which one specifically. The Flame, I'm down to talk about The Flame. The Flame is an exciting new all-lesbian musical written by lesbians with primarily lesbian cast, and it's absolutely thrilling. I'm excited to be a part of it.
Awesome. Liz?
Hi, I'm Liz. I am the lyricist and director for the musical podcast Three Ghosts by Pipe Dream Theater. I assume that's what I'm here to talk about today.
Yep.
We wrote and produced a musical during the pandemic with a cast of 46 from all over the world who never met each other.
6 continents, right? Did I read that right? 6?
Yeah,
6?
all 6 livable continents. Massive.
Great. I didn't mean to make this a quiz and ask you and put you on the spot about what we were talking about, but Leroy, I believe Dreamgirls. Yes, we're here to talk about Dreamgirls.
Yes,
okay,
I'm
great.
here to talk about Dreamgirls. My name is Leroy Church. I am a Broadway performer, lastly in King Kong and a little vacation swing for The Lion King. I did the Lion King tour for about 3 years. I'm here to talk about Dreamgirls. Dreamgirls happened on the Clubhouse app. If you don't know what that app is, it's a new audio app that's just going viral, projected to be at $1 billion. Over the pandemic, I hosted audition. I was a casting, creative director, and artistic director and associate producer for Dreamgirls. So I got the show together. We have 4 amazing star-studded cast, featuring people from Alex Newell to Marisha Wallace, and just to name a couple. But during our audition process, it was amazing because we had Shirley Ralph come, Henry Krieger, the original composer of the music.
Yeah.
Amber Riley helped with the auditions.
I'm so excited.
Number 2.
I can't wait to talk to you all about that. Also, this is what when you casually say vacation swing, it's nothing. Of course you did all of this on Clubhouse. And Daniel, please tell us about Row.
So I wrote the book to a musical called Row, which is based on a memoir called A Pearl in the Storm, which I have behind me. It's by this. An amazing woman named Tori Murden McClure was the first woman to row solo across the Atlantic Ocean. She did that in 1999, having failed, spoiler alert, in 98. And here's the boat. Here's a model of the boat.
No way.
That's a boat that Tori made and gave to me.
That's awesome.
Somewhere around here, I have a piece of the actual boat that made it across the Atlantic too. She did this. We made a musical about it. Me and my collaborator, Don Landis, who's an amazing singer-songwriter. We were commissioned by the public to write it. We were going to do it last summer on stage live at the Williamstown Theater Festival. And then there's a thing that happened, I'm not sure if you guys are aware, where there was a virus. It sort of went a lot of places, shut some stuff down.
Okay, Daniel.
So we didn't do it. So Mandy Greenfield, the artistic director of Williamstown, transitioned the whole festival to Audible. So everything in the season, save one show, was recorded for Audible. with Kate Navin as our producer there. So we have that, and it will be released on Thursday, April 8th. And so it really isn't like a bootleg of a reading of the show. It actually is like a created, soundtracked,
Right, yeah.
audio experience. It's kind of miraculous to see what they did. Mike Kreuter from Yellow Sound produced it, and with amazing sound design by Kai Harada and orchestrations by Dan Kluger, and like a ridiculous cast starring Grace McLean as Tori. So it's pretty exciting, I gotta say. Like, yeah.
And I'm so excited because we have so many different perspectives when it comes to making audio content here in this room. So I'm thrilled about it. But I also just want to say, let's keep this casual. Like, feel free to jump in, respond to each other, ask each other questions, because I'm just here as a nerd, just very excited to hear how this all works. So I guess I wanted to ask, and we've gotten into it a little bit already, but was COVID the main inspiration for diving into an all audio medium, or was that on anyone's radar at all, just because podcasts have been such a big thing for a long time? What was that journey for all of you?
I would like to answer that.
Go ahead.
Leroy here, I'm speaking. COVID was the pivoting point, with the Broadway industry being stripped away. I was like, what do I do next? And, so sitting around, all this creativity started to fester. And that's how I found the Clubhouse app. The show wouldn't have been able to happen if it were at a different time, because these Broadway stars would not have had the free time or the will to volunteer to do it. So COVID definitely inspired it. And like most people, it was really depressing and it was really sad, but this was the silver lining. So we could bring some people some joy in the midst of all that.
Yeah.
I'm finished speaking.
I wish you weren't, Leroy. I just want to say I like your speaking voice. I can hear you smiling in your voice, and my heart is like expanding every time you speak. So,
oh my God, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I am smiling.
I know. I can feel it. I mean, I get to see it, but like, it's just, you can tell in your voice. It's dope. I'll go ahead since I've already jumped in. I don't think I would have been able to do this. I think, much like Leroy said, this is one of the blessings of a very dark time. And because I have the time, I was able to really think, oh, let me be a part of a podcast lesbian musical, because we've been recording this over the span of several months to really get it tight and to have tons of rehearsal and learn the music. And it's not something I would have been able to devote time to otherwise. So I'm grateful in that respect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it certainly was like not what we were expecting. I remember sitting upstairs in the fall, or in the last spring, when Mandy was like, we officially can't do the festival, but I want to do this, and thinking, well, that's, I mean, in practically, Audible is able to pay us weirdly more than the Williamstown Theater Festival would be able to, because they have Jeff Bezos's money, hail Bezos, and like we are able to, spend time. We were able to spend 3 weeks on Zoom workshops working on the show while we rewrote and read aloud every day. And we were able to sort of re-edit as we went through the recording process, which we were actually able to do in person. That was one of the things that made this one trickier than the plays that they did on Audible, which is that we needed to, because it was a musical, record in person.
Right.
So it was a real gift for us. And now we're going to be able to, when we are able to put it back on its feet, we're going to have had the advantage of having, paid workshop time to really get through a lot of this kind of stuff. So for us, it's been, I think, a real boon. And also, if we had filled up the 200 seat theater at Williamstown, for the 10 performances or something like that, 2,000 people could see it. And now we have, endless possibilities. Friends in Australia can listen and really experience Tori's story in a much more widespread way, that then hopefully will encourage them to come see it when we can actually do it, in real life.
Right. What about you, Liz?
podcast was actually on our radar. My partner, C.E. Simon, who's the book writer and the composer, for years has been, Liz, let's do a musical podcast. I really want to do a musical podcast, but I work abroad. I work for cruise ships and theme parks. So I'm never home to, wrangle the cats and get them in a room to do a musical podcast. And the story goes, like, we were having dinner one night. It was in September. And he was like, Liz, I think we should do a musical podcast. And I was like, well, we got to do 3 Ghosts. We got 4 months till Christmas. Let's go. So it was like a rewrite from that moment to when we released it. It was casting the 46 people. And I'm so jealous because we were not in the same room for recording. So I had to just let everybody do what they do. And obviously the skill set and the knowledge for the technology and the know-how and the room acoustics and all of that, person to person to person, time zone to country to whatever, varies. So everybody, including myself, like, we learned a ton on the way, but we didn't have rehearsals. We had one full Zoom rehearsal with most of the cast. And then it was a matter of letting them fly. And then me getting in touch with them and doing these one-on-one 15 or 20-minute Zoom rehearsals just for retakes. Like, I need you to retake this. This doesn't work. I need you to do this again. And they would just send back thousands and thousands of sound files, and I would sit here and go through all of them. But so it was really individually directed and produced in a lot of ways by upwards of 4 dozen people around the world, and it's complete 3D binaural sound. So in the environment, like, once you hit play, you're like, oh, I'm in a room with these people.
Yes.
And that was really important to us because, when you go see a play or a musical and you get to feel the energy of everybody around you and everybody on the stage, and then to translate that to a podcast, we wanted to use the technology that we have and the abilities to, present all that in a totally different format. So I think the 3D binaural sound is totally a winner, and it's going to be like the wave of the future of musical podcasts.
It really is incredible. You put these headphones on and you really do feel like, okay, there's that echo there, but it's great. Like, it feels, you're exactly like you said, you feel like you're in a room. It's amazing.
That's so cool. I want to hear more about this.
Yeah.
The 3D, right?
Oh my God, I will never shut up if you ask me that. But we definitely know more than we did when we started. It was a learn as you go type of scenario, which I love. I'm like, baptism by fire, Pete.
Learn by doing. Totally.
Let's know what we don't know. We're not new to writing or producing musicals, but we were new to this. So it was a lot of trial and error, and a lot of stuff is fantastic and worked beautifully, and a lot of stuff did not. And you're just like, you know what? We're putting it in the world and we'll do better next time. Because if you're going to make art and you're going to release it for the holiday season, you should really release it for the holiday season. But it was an amazing surprise, because the second Zoom rehearsal that we got to have was actually a cast party. So the day before we released, we got all 46 people together so they could listen. And I thought, this is going to be strange, because, like, even now we're just all staring at each other. Now imagine 46 people on headphones, not talking for 2 hours, looking at each other on Zoom. And everybody, the chat was just like blowing up. They're like, what is this? What is that sound? Who's saying this? Who's this person? Because, P.S., most of them don't even know each other. They're sort of humans I've collected just from having the blessing of working on Earth for so long. So it was really cool to watch their reaction to what they had created, having no clue what they had created, like a massive surprise party.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I'd love to hear from all of you, really, what your live theater experiences brought to the table when working with just audio. Because Leroy, I know for you, like on Clubhouse, if you don't know about Clubhouse, it's strictly an audio medium. So were you able to work with Zoom, like on Zoom with everyone face to face? But this is really a question for the room, truly. Like, what did your real life theater experiences bring to this audio medium?
Well, my real life experience is connecting in the room. And since we weren't able to do that, we did everything in our power to create that virtual space and that virtual family. And we were able to do that via, we'll have rehearsals on Clubhouse, music rehearsals, and then we'll have rehearsals. So we set up the schedule, just to be clear, Saturday and Sunday from 12 to 6. We have 4 different casts. So we puzzle piece both casts. all 4 casts in with music rehearsals on Clubhouse and then Zoom table reads every Saturday and Sunday. And so before we started off, we had like a cast meet and greet. So we wanted everything to feel like just like you were in a musical, because you were.
And
so
that's live, right? Some of the stuff on Clubhouse is live. I know you did the harmonies recorded,
yes,
but
because of the limitations of the app, all of the harmonies were pre-recorded. Every single person, instead of wasting a lot of time in music rehearsal going through sheet music, we had our voice director, musical director, go through and record reference tracks for every single part in the show. She sent those out, and then they would have a rehearsal where they go over with her what she sent out, and then they would record that weekend, send the tracks back, and then fly them in to create the background track. Every person in the show, all 52 people, had to be sound engineers. We had to get equipment sent out all over the world to UK. Marisha Wallace in UK. Alex is doing Zoe's playlist in London and Canada, and then all over the United States. So I'm online, Amazon, sending out iRig 2s to everybody, and interfaces and microphones, and making sure you have Logic versus GarageBand. These are all of the little intricacies that had to go into it, but the rehearsal process was very interesting, pinging people in the room for a Clubhouse rehearsal because the room had to be locked. And then on Zoom, trying to manage, sound and the latency and delay and all that kind of stuff. So we spent hours and hours, just the team alone. Like, we had a great team that was so dedicated, volunteering hours. We would have rehearsal from 9 to 4 a.m. It's supposed to be an hour-long rehearsal, but it would just go, and we started feeling like we were getting closer to the right sound at 7 heaven, or if we turn the iRig up a little bit, or if we try you go and then I go, and then like even down to when the girls live, they jump in at different solo parts. We had timed it so that they come in during a word. So they weren't listening to the beat or the music. They would listen to a word before so that it showed up on time for the live performance.
Because of
so
the
those
delay.
are just, yeah. So those are just some
God.
of the intricacies that went into what people saw as a flawless show. It took a lot of work.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was something we really discovered, was that like the idea of making, because ours is not, much like you, Liz, like ours, and I guess you too, Jen, like ours is a new musical. And so we're trying to like do the things that you do in a room where you develop a new musical, where there's underscoring, and underscoring has to happen to stuff that's already been recorded, and you can't really change it, and you can't change the timing of it. And once it's locked. So what we all discovered is that trying to make a new musical in this fashion is exponentially more work, because of the levels of communication that have to happen between engineer, producer, mixer, then orchestration, then music director. So, like even recording it, though we got to do it live, because of COVID restrictions, we could only have 3 people in a room at a time, and it's a 10-person cast. So very often scenes would happen, but also you couldn't see anyone because of the way the studio was set up. So even though you were in the studio at the same time, you couldn't really see each other. And we also have one deaf actor, so he needed his interpreter there. And so he would have that, but she was another person in the room. Oh, or maybe she was on Zoom. The writers were not in the room. We were only on Zoom and on audio feed. The director and music director, Tyne Raffaelli and Mary Mitchell Campbell, were in the studio with masks on. So they would be like, Danny, Don, any notes? We'd give them the notes, they'd give them out. So it was a lot of levels of that. And then in the afterwards, trying to edit it all together and make a thing was so many layers. I was in Australia for 2 months working on Come From Away, and I would get a mix and then be like, great, you have 24 hours for notes on this. So then you have to like go through and put together like a time coded, I mean, it was just so much more work than it would have been had it been live. And I think there were a lot of corners that we could have cut, and the quality would have been less good.
Right. Yeah. What is that
funny
thing
that you
go ahead?
Well, I love hearing every word that you say, because I like appreciate and sympathize and empathize, and like I'm so blown away by the whole everything that
when
like
you
Daniel and
get
Leroy,
it.
you just can't help but laugh because you're like, oh no, I'm in a pile of rubble. What did I get myself into?
No,
And
Mary Mitchell, by the
sometimes
4th day when we were recording on, or the 5th day of recording when we were recording Ensemble Vocals, it was, you had these 2 people from this hour to this hour, and then they would go through the whole show and record all the ensemble. Then she had these 3 people, and then do the whole thing again, and then do the whole thing again. And so she was like, by the end, she was like, I can't remember if I said this before. Like Mary Mitchell was going nuts because then she had to take all of that and layer it together.
Yes.
This was also having laid down all those
be...
recording tracks like you did for Dreamgirls, where you're like sending out tracks and you're having music rehearsal over Zoom. Oh, the other part was to do the rehearsals. The cast sent Mary Mitchell and her music team their vocals, and then she put together a piano track so that they could, when we were doing rehearsals, they could control all the music, because you can't have, so the Zoom readings, when we would do a Zoom reading, to get any sense of what we had, all of the music came from Mary Mitchell and her team, and no one sang live.
Yeah,
except for Grace, who had most of the stuff, but she was her own engineer. Like, it was insane.
Yeah, I was saying to the cast, well, first off, it feels good to be in this room with people who get it. Because like when you're talking, I'm like, you understand. Because people see the end product and they're like, oh my God, Dreamgirls was great. It trended, blah, 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 10,000, whatever people saw it. But you guys get like all of those little hours that you spend trying to manage 4 different casts, and like for me, 12 to 4, it really hit home when you said saying the same thing, because going through a full table read of Dreamgirls 4 times in a row with 4 different casts, you're like, wait, did I just get that note?
Did I not? In that show, they just sing all the time.
And that part is right.
I could sing the whole thing. I have an old bootleg of the original Broadway Company, so
I love it.
Don't start. But like,
I love it.
You know, just like Loretta Devine and my life is like very intertwined. I think what you managed to do with that is incredible, especially because the amount of singing that happens throughout that whole show, it just never stops.
Yeah, I was telling the cast that you are basically the new triple threat, which is sing, act, and press play, because everybody was their own sound engineer. I remember Alex knew. I was like, what am I supposed to do? Like cry and then press play? And I was like, yeah, actually, like when I was in King Kong, you know, Christiane Pitts, she had to cry, scream, and click that harness in if she wanted to go flying without dying. I mean, this is just what actors have to do. And I was like, this is the choreography.
By the way, Leroy, I was at your opening and I loved that show. I had such a good time.
Yes, that was crazy. It was crazy to be on stage with a ton. 3 tons.
The most fun. When those eyes came on and that mouth opened, oh my goodness.
That was the magic
like maybe like a little
theater. Yeah, that is my favorite part of the entire show, just when he arrives and that whole scene when she's flying. Yeah. I mean, the audience went wild, but yes, creating, you guys get it. I love it.
Yeah. Jenn, can I ask you a question about your experience? So were you in these kind of Zoom rooms were they sending you full sample tracks? Like how were you learning your music for the Flame?
Yeah, it was tough. We only had one read through with everybody like months ago, and then they sent all of rehearsal tracks. And at first it was just like they would just send the music and just what they wanted me to record to. I was like, I'm going to need a plunk, or I'm going to need somebody to walk me through. We tried to have a Zoom rehearsal, but there was the lag and I couldn't hear, and I was like, I missed the middle note. Like, it was very, very difficult. So we finally were able to speak the same language. And I said, I need somebody to walk through and say, measure 35. You start now, you know, and sing it and plunk it and do it, so I could learn it. And then recording it, I'm finishing the recording on Thursday, and I have to plan for somebody to come over, double masked. They have to set it up. I bought a new mic for this, but apparently it's not as good as some of the other mics used. I have been in sessions where I've recorded line after line after line for a good chunk, maybe 30 minutes. And I'm like, oh, I forgot to record myself on GarageBand because it's my responsibility. It's not great for an actor, I gotta say. It's just super hard. I don't have anybody to act with. I'm just going on sound, and it's so much more than pushing play. There's so much else that we have to be in charge of, things that we've had to buy, equipment and stuff, and figuring it out with each new thing has been very, very difficult. Totally worth it because the end product's going to be dope, but it's been quite frustrating, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'm glad you said that because that's the truth, right? That's real. It can be a little difficult. I mean, I've been podcasting for over 5 years, and there are still times where I'm like, nope, wasn't recording. Oh,
yeah.
We have moments with people crying.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Look, if you're making audio and not crying, then you're doing it wrong. Honestly, sometimes
it's just not what we've been trained to do. We've had to learn on the fly, and learning while we're also trying to act and to give performances that are worthy of listening to, and then giving them. But sometimes, oh, you just did it and you nailed it, but it wasn't recording. Is like heartbreaking in the moment.
Yeah.
Or you just want to sound good and you're like playing with the iRig in your microphone and you can't get the sound right and you're getting feedback and you're singing your heart out and it just sounds like trash in the audience.
That's right.
Because
or my dog starts barking or wants to go out or what, you know what I mean? Like I'm not in a studio. I don't own
or
my
the
own
neighbors
studio.
start knocking.
The neighbors, we're in New York. I got a saxophone player who lives above me. Thank God, I love him. But you know, when he's rehearsing, he doesn't know I'm recording. You know, it's a trip.
And the other part is like you're not in the space. Like the way that you perform as a performer, and I am saying this only as the writer. Like I had the easiest job in all of this because all I had to do was like. I was constantly sending out emails like, what do you guys need? Can I do anything? You're amazing. Like that was my job, was just encouragement and gratitude.
Same.
But, like that was all I could do. But even just performances, you notice the difference because you're not in a theater, you're in a room that is not, it's not expansive. You don't have that space around you. And the difference in how your body kinesthetically like changes how your voice makes things is really different depending on the space that you're in. And you know, so like we had to just record you know, like an audible extra where we had an interview afterwards and they sent me a whole kit in a box and a thing. And it was terrifying, just terrifying. Because I was like, I don't know what this stuff is and I'm gonna mess this up and you have to press the button and do the thing and connect it with. It was a lot.
Yeah.
I love when you said your body in space because that was just one of the things that I really noticed how when we're all sitting down like this, the voice, and a lot of times when I was giving the notes to the actors, I would say, make sure you get up and physically do whatever you're doing. Because it definitely changes. And I noticed even when they were singing, like a lot of the notes is like, you know, because Dreamgirls music is so good. You could just, and if you're a great singer, you can just sing right through it and, you know, and we don't get the story, but you sound amazing. So I was making sure that they added in those, you know, real life dynamics. And that's why we did it on Zoom as well. So it wasn't just audio because it does change something in your voice. It's just like when she said, I can hear you smiling. That's what I want to feel audibly.
Yeah.
So our lead is a gentleman named Noel Reyes. He's Filipino. He lives in the Philippines and he plays Scrooge, the lead of the musical. And he's got this cardboard box that's filled with foam and he's got a beautiful digital recorder in it. But, you know, there's trucks outside or there's the neighbor's dogs or 2 or 3 dogs or whatever. And he goes through this wonderful transformation in the show. And the whole time he's recording in this box. And at one point we were like, you got to show us how you're recording all of this. And it's a literal cardboard box with just but we have another gentleman who had no recording setup or equipment. So, you know, he put these jackets, he hung them from a ceiling fan and created like his own studio to dampen the sound around him. So his room acoustics wouldn't take over. And And they had to, because they had to record, our cast recorded every single line 3 or 4 times. And then you guys, I don't know, maybe this is what Leroy was saying, but I recorded every single voice part for every single song, you know, soprano, soprano, alto, tenor, tenor, bass, bass, and tried to put on some voices and then chunked those up into phrases, sent those phrases to people. They would record with me. If they did my articulation and my dynamics, then they would all line up as close as we could get them. And then the magic of technology helps out. But I mean, I sit here just grinning at all of you because I know that everything we did, although entirely different, was exactly the same and, you know, produced completely individual results, which is like really, really cool to hear about.
Yeah, that's what I love, that you're coming with such different experiences. All these different kinds of roads still led to these things that were created. So I have a question for all of you. What do you think the audio medium still fulfills in you as theater people, real live theater people? I know it's not the same, but what about this process made you feel connected to live theater?
Well, I will say, and I'll speak briefly on this, but I have been a person, I feel bad about it, but I have not been able to get into sort of Zoom or like video theater. Something about it feels cold to me and a little distancing and doesn't satisfy any of the things that theater satisfies in me, which is a direct human connection with an audience right there, especially the kind of work that I like to write, which is fourth wall is non-existent. There's direct address narrative. It is all about creating a theatrical human experience where we get to sort of breathe collectively, right? And there is something actually about putting in earphones and hearing Grace say to you, day 1, mile 0, let's go. Where it feels like she's talking to you and you're in the room, and it feels like somehow those juices that theater satisfies in this very intimate and personal and sort of much more lo-fi way than Zoom and video and all of the tricks that you can do with that feels distancing in a way. It's more like a movie that is colder for the most part, that does not feel requiring of your imagination. But the way that theater in its very best, even in the show that Jenn and I work on, Come From Away, you know, the way that show requires an audience's imagination to come in because it's just some chairs and some tables and some trees. Audio requires your imagination, your active imagination, to put the visuals on top of it. So that does exactly what theater does. And I found it to be a very satisfying way to tell the story that I think had we done a video Zoom version of it, it wouldn't have done the same thing.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think there is something to the audio in general. That's why salespeople use it so much, because it's said in I read a report that was the #1 seller, is calling people. And that's why you get so many of these calls. There is something to listening to the voice. There is something, there's some magic that happens, you know. And I think that the other thing, so that's one thing. And then the other thing is that limitations can sometimes bring out all of these other creative juices. So being so limited in the time that we were in with COVID and being, you know, closing and having no Broadway at all, and having no auditions and no pro studio and no going to that, you know, you miss it so much that just a crumb of it, like having a Zoom call where you feel like you're in a room and you create that little sanctuary of performers again, and you pray before you start, or you say 5-minute call, that just lights you up. So there is something that still happens with the audio. There is. But I do get what you're saying. It could feel a little like a cartoon sometimes, like, you know, it's not the real thing. There's a bit of distance, but you can still, with the heart and with, you know, that stuff reads. Just like what I said again, when you say, I can hear the smile in your voice. And when somebody tells you they love you, you believe them.
Yeah,
you know what
that's
I mean?
right. That's right. I agree with you. I agree with you both. There's the intimacy of having something in your ear. I've recently, only during the pandemic, started listening to audiobooks and have been listening to Glennon Doyle's Untamed, which should be recommended reading / listening for everyone. And hearing the author read her own words in your ear, it feels like we're buddies. It feels like I'm close to her. She's talking directly to me. There's something about the intimacy of audio and not having to project to the to the balcony that feels very, very comforting and kind of sexy. So I'm into that part of audio for real.
Yeah.
When
We
you
love
talk
the
about
sexy.
the humanity of theater and just like the human connection that we all just desperately want, when we started sending out invites, I thought, okay, 10 people are going to say yes to this, like just my friends who are talented, and I'll get them to do it. And all of a sudden, you've got half the world that wants to do it with you, and people are thanking me. And I'm like, but you guys are doing everything I just asked you to do. And they were like, but most of them, I mean, they hadn't done anything since March. And it was September, October when they started recording. And they were like, you don't understand. Like, we needed this so badly. You don't even understand what it feels like. And that was like, that is what it was, whether it be a podcast, whether it be theater. When you do get that opportunity, you don't even realize how much you need it until it's presented to you again.
One of our cast, actually, it was his first time out of his apartment to go tape it. It was his first time out of the apartment since it had started. It was, and we taped it in November. That's how long it took. And it comes out, this week. We taped it in November. That's how long it's taken to like put it all together. March to November was his first time out of the house.
Wow.
That's unbelievable.
And what you said about
tears.
10 people, like, to do an audition on Clubhouse, I'm thinking, oh, a couple of people will show up who, and I'll just cast my friends who can do it. If we don't, and then here's this audition and there's 10,000 plus people in the room. Is closed because it's at full capacity.
Yeah,
and we're auditioning people for 10 hours, without a break. Like, that goes to show you that people miss it so much that they are like, any little crumb they're reaching at.
When we finished, it was December 19th. We finished listening to it and everybody's like, when's the next one? Are we doing this again? Like, is this happening again? I was like, can we have the holidays and then we'll start writing a new show? But everybody was like ready to go already. And I was like, this is amazing. Like, it's definitely a new wave of theater and storytelling.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask about exactly that. Actually, I wanted to ask, what do you think the future of audio theater is? Will it flourish? Will it grow? Especially, the pandemic will one day be behind us. So what do you think will continue to stay with this audio medium?
I think it will. I mean, look at TikTok. And this, not only is it like going viral and Clubhouse is projected at, like I said, $1 billion worth. I've created a club called On Broadway, which is a theater space. And we were just featured yesterday in Broadway World.
I'm in that club.
People are, yes, exactly. So we're having performances and discussions and all these kind of things. But this is going to be the digital theater, when we don't know what's going to happen with COVID and what's next, God forbid. But, I think that people have found that there's real value in there. It's less money. You can be more creative. Sometimes, like, when there are limitations, it creates new ideas. Like, when you can't see each other in person, then you have shows like that are digitally, I don't know. I can't even think of the innovation that's coming up next because of how we have to interact. And that's the beauty, because art imitates life. So I think there's a real space for this. I think it's very lucrative, as we're seeing from Theater Barn and their development shows and how they've been streaming. And I think that Broadway producers would be slow not to jump on board.
Leroy, I just want to say that I would jump on board any project you're a part of. Your energy is infectious. I just think you're a delight. I'm a huge fan, my friend.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I think, Jillian, to answer your question, I think it will continue. I think we've opened a door, and I think that there's another way for us to connect and another way for us to create. And again, I like what Leroy's saying about when there are limitations, new things are born. So I think that we've opened a cool door to a new kind of sharing our stories and creating together. I just hope I don't have to be on the on the technical end of it too much more.
Right. One day you can do it in person, but still have the audio.
Yeah, put me in a studio and give me my things. Let me go. Absolutely.
In person, I think that the real challenge of it for us certainly was the idea of trying to make a new musical where you're trying to like be nimble and change stuff and make stuff new as happens with new musical, where you just run over the piano and like try things, is not possible in this realm, and it sort of messes you up for new work. But I think once whenever that's going to be, once the ability to actually gather more, more easily happens, I think that there's going to be a lot of really cool stuff that can.
There'll probably be an app by next week. You'll be able to play and sing in real time. It has to come.
And robots.
It has to.
Robots to come over to our house and be our sound engineers for us.
Right, they'll send a drone with all the equipment. Yeah.
Right.
Yep. I just want a robot to do that.
Yeah.
The Tony-winning robot.
Look, you never know. Before we wrap up, can you please tell everyone watching, listening, where they can find you and or your projects?
The Flame is on a podcast called Les Hangout, LEZ Hangout, which has been an LGBTQ podcast that's been out there for quite some time right now. So that's where you'll be able to find The Flame. I'm not sure exactly when it's released.
It comes out in June.
It does?
Jen.
Oh, I better. Okay, thanks. I better make sure that I do well on this recording on Thursday then, because they're gonna have to
You're gonna
edit
be great.
that stuff.
You're Jenn Colella.
Okay, thanks.
You're gonna be great.
Everything for me is on Broadway. All of my acts are at Leroy Church. Leroy, Leroy Church, like the Holy Church of God. That's all of my platforms for social media and Clubhouse. I'm the Clubhouse Broadway producer. So if you are looking for new shows and auditions and conversations with casting and writers and all that good stuff, that's where we are on Broadway Club.
3 Ghosts is on pipedreamtheater.com. You can find all of the streaming services there, and all of the new upcoming Pipe Dream musical podcasts that are happening. We're releasing one in May if all things go well, so that's exciting. Follow us at our Pipe Dream Theater on Insta. I'm Liz Muller Directs. Connect. I love it.
You can find Row starting on, when is this happening? We're taping this today.
April, like 18th, 17th, 18th.
Okay, so you can find Row on Audible now because it's after that date. And you will probably, and I think you will be able to see it this summer, which I'm not going to say now because it's before the announcement, but I think you will see it this summer live someplace if Actors Equity comes through and makes things a little more possible for divine members of their union.
Perfect. Thank you, all of you, for being here in this Zoom room. Thank you, everyone, for watching. I'm just thrilled. Let's go make some stuff.
Yay!
Yeah?
Thanks,
Let's go make some stuff.
Thank
you so much, everyone.
Thank you, loves.
Bye.
Take care, y'all.
Bye.
Nice to see you, Colella. I'll see you soon.
Thank you so much.